This is a shoeshine, timeless tales creation. Any similarity to real-life persons or situations is absurd. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Farmer in the Dell. The first rays of dawn filtered through the grimy blinds, painting sickly yellow stripes across the worn linoleum floor. I squinted, feeling the familiar ache in my lower back throb with renewed intensity. Another day, another sunrise, another reminder of the shitstorm brewing inside me. Cancer, betrayal, grief, the unholy trinity that had taken root in my life, squeezing the joy out of existence like a python constricting its prey. I shuffled towards the bathroom, the floorboards groaning under my weight. Every creak echoed the hollowness inside me. In the mirror, a stranger stared back. Lines etched themselves deeper around my eyes, the once vibrant blue dulled to a weary gray. My hair, once thick and brown, was now a sparse battlefield of silver and white, casualties of the war raging within. The image of her, my wife, superimposed itself over my reflection. Her perfect smile, the one that used to melt my heart, now sent a shard of ice through my gut. The same smile she used to flash at Billy, my best friend, the man who had become my Judas. The memory of their intertwined figures caught in a stolen embrace burned behind my eyelids. Rage, a familiar friend, clawed at my throat. But today, it was laced with a new emotion: despair. What was the point of fighting? My body was betraying me, my loved ones had turned their backs, and the future stretched before me like an arid wasteland. Suddenly, a wet, snuffling sound broke the silence. Smooshy, my pug, his wrinkled face etched with concern, nudged my hand. His soulful eyes, filled with unwavering loyalty, were a balm to my wounded soul. He whined, sensing my distress, and I knelt, burying my face in his soft fur. "It's okay, boy," I mumbled, my voice thick with tears. "It's okay. We'll get through this together." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but Smooshy didn't judge. He simply licked away a stray tear, his unconditional love a beacon in the darkness. The day stretched before me, a tedious chore list of responsibilities. Work, doctor's appointment, lawyer's meeting, each item a brick on the wall I was building around my crumbling heart. But somewhere, beneath the despair, a flicker of defiance remained. I wouldn't go down without a fight. Not for Smooshy, not for myself. At work, the fluorescent lights hummed like a chorus of discontent. Lonnie, my boss, eyed me with concern. He'd been a good friend, and the suddenness of my resignation had obviously caught him off guard. "Dell, you sure about this?" he asked, his voice laced with worry. "We can work something out. Adjust your workload." I shook my head, the lie catching in my throat. "It's not about the work, Lonnie. It's personal." He didn't pry, thankfully. He simply nodded, his expression a mix of sadness and understanding. As I walked out, the weight of his unspoken question settled on my shoulders. What the hell was I doing? Dr. Duchesne's office was a sterile haven of white walls and soft music. He was my family doctor, a man who'd known me since I was a kid. His kind eyes crinkled at the corners as he greeted me, but the concern in his gaze was unmistakable. "What brings you in today, Dell?" he asked, his voice gentle. I hesitated, then blurted it out. "Cancer, Doc, stage 3. The silence that followed was deafening. Then he placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch surprisingly firm. "We'll fight it, Dell, together." His words, though simple, held a weight that surprised me. It wasn't a false promise, but a quiet acknowledgement of the battle ahead, a battle I couldn't face alone. As I walked out, the afternoon sun felt warmer on my skin. The despair hadn't vanished, but it was nudged aside by a sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was still something worth fighting for. Later that day, the world tilted on its axis. Rushing home, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm, I found Smooshy lying still on the porch. A car, its driver oblivious, sped down the street. My loyal companion, my furry anchor, was gone. Grief, raw and primal, ripped through me. The world blurred. The air turned thick with unshed tears. I knelt beside him, clutching his lifeless form, the emptiness inside me echoing the void on the porch. But amidst the crushing pain, a spark ignited, a spark of fury, of defiance. They had taken everything from me, The world shrunk to a pinprick of blinding white. The doctor's words, "Stage 4 pancreatic," echoed in my skull, a relentless drumbeat drowning out everything else. Stage 4, advanced, aggressive, the death knell of hope. Dr. Duchesne, his kind face etched with concern, tried to offer comfort, but his words sounded muted, distant. "We have options, Dell," he said, his voice a gentle tide against the storm raging inside me. "Treatments, trials." But the options felt like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Leaving the office, sunlight felt like a slap on the raw wound of my reality. The city pulsed with life, a cruel contrast to the countdown clock ticking within me. My breath came in ragged gasps, each one a reminder of the borrowed time I clung to. Revenge. The word, ugly and primal, surfaced in my mind. Not the Hollywood cathartic kind, but a cold, calculated fire. The slut, Billy. Their faces, intertwined in that stolen moment, fueled the flames. They had taken everything, my trust, my love, my peace. Now I would take theirs. The lawyer's office was a sterile monument to legalities. Words like separation, divorce, assets danced around me, meaningless in the face of my mortality. Yet I signed, each stroke of the pen a nail in their coffin of happiness. Billy's house, once a haven of shared laughter, now loomed like a fortress of betrayal. The doorbell echoed in the twilight, a summons to battle. He opened the door, his face a mask of surprise morphing into unease. "Dell?" he stammered, his voice thin and nervous. "Just settling accounts, Billy," I said, my voice a low growl. He tried to deny, to bluster, but the truth hung heavy in the air. His defiance crumbled under the weight of my accusation, leaving only fear in its wake. The words flowed, venomous and sharp, each one a blow aimed at his heart. I exposed his lies, his cowardice, his shallow friendship, relishing the flicker of pain that crossed his face. But the satisfaction was fleeting, poisoned by the hollowness inside. Leaving him shattered, I drove to her place. The apartment, once a symbol of our shared life, now felt alien. She opened the door, her smile faltering as she saw me. The defiance in her eyes, however, sparked a different kind of anger. "You thought you could get away with it?" I snarled, the word bitter on my tongue. She played the victim, her voice laced with tears and accusations. But the act held no sway. I laid bare her deceit, her calculated cruelty, stripping away the mask she wore. The tears this time were genuine, fueled by fear and the shattering of her carefully constructed facade. But seeing her broken didn't bring solace, only a deeper sense of emptiness. Revenge, I realized, was a dish best served cold, but the taste left me colder still. The fire in me had dwindled, replaced by a chilling apathy. What was the point of destroying lives already consumed by their own rot? Driving home, the city lights blurred into streaks of neon. The moon, a pale witness above, offered no answers. My hands, clenched on the steering wheel, trembled not with rage but with the icy grip of fear. Fear of the future, fear of the unknown, fear of the dying of the light. Back in the empty house, the silence pressed in. Smooshy's absence, a gaping hole in my life, echoed the hollowness inside me. His leash, hanging by the door, was a cruel reminder of the life stolen, the love extinguished. Tears, the first since I received the news, finally came. They were not for the slut, not for Billy, but for the life I was losing, for the dreams that would remain unfulfilled. But even in the depths of despair, a spark flickered. A memory of Smooshy, his stubby tail wagging, his soulful eyes filled with unwavering love. He had lived and cherished every moment, even the smallest ones. Maybe, just maybe, that's what mattered. Not the grand gestures, not the bitter revenge, but the simple act of living, of loving, of finding meaning in the face of the inevitable end. The decision, when it came, was quiet, almost imperceptible. I wouldn't go down consumed by hate. I would fight, not for myself, but for the time I had left, for the love I still had to give. The next day I called Dr. Duchesne. "Let's fight this thing, Doc," I said, my voice hoarse but firm. "Together." The clock on the wall ticked, each second a hammer blow against the hollow shell of my life. Lonnie's words echoed in the sterile office. "Dell, take some time, think about it." But thinking was what had led me here, to the precipice of a future painted in shades of fear and regret. The resignation letter, crisp and official, felt heavy in my hand. It wasn't just a job I was leaving, it was a chapter, a whole damn novel slammed shut. My colleagues, their faces etched with concern and confusion, were ghosts fading into the dusty corners of my memory. Walking out of the building, the weight on my shoulders felt lighter, replaced by a cold, exhilarating emptiness. No more deadlines, no more reports, no more pretending everything was okay. The cancer, a silent predator, had given me a warped sense of freedom. The familiar route home felt alien. Each house, each tree held memories, both joyful and painful. The swing set where our laughter used to spill into the twilight. The dented mailbox where I received Smooshy's puppy collar, all whispered tales of a life now slipping through my fingers. The house, once a haven, now felt like a tomb. The silence was deafening, broken only by the tick-tock of the clock mocking my stolen time. Anger, a viper coiled in my gut, threatened to rear its ugly head. But what was the point? Revenge, like a cheap shot of whiskey, would only leave a bitter aftertaste. Packing was cathartic. Each item, a thread in the tapestry of my past, was discarded or tucked away. Photos, once cherished, now held faces I barely recognized. Clothes, once worn with pride, felt like costumes of a forgotten life. The final box, labeled Memories, was left unopened. It held the good, the bad, and the ugly, a Pandora's box I wasn't ready to unleash. As dusk painted the sky in fiery hues, a restlessness gnawed at me. I grabbed my keys, the engine roaring to life like a defiant scream. No destination, just the open road stretching before me like an invitation. Vegas, the city of sin and second chances, beckoned. It was a cliché, a desperate attempt to outrun the inevitable, but what else did I have? The rearview mirror showed my life shrinking, a distorted image in the fading light. The desert night was a canvas of stars, each one a silent witness to my journey. The wind whipped through my hair, carrying away the dust of the past. I was a lone rider, chasing a horizon that seemed to recede with every mile. Days bled into nights, fueled by cheap motel coffee and the adrenaline of escape. I gambled, not for riches, but for a thrill, a fleeting sense of control. The dice rolled, the cards fell, and I lost again and again. But with each loss, a sliver of the anger that had clung to me began to fade. One night, staring at the neon lights painting the sky in garish hues, a realization struck me. I wasn't running from death, I was running towards it. But what did it mean to live, truly live, in the face of the end? The answer wasn't in the flashing lights or the empty promises of the casino floor. It was back there, in the life I had left behind, in the people I loved, and in the memories that made me who I was. The return journey was different. The road stretched before me, not as an escape, but as a path back. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of hope, a promise of a new dawn. The house, once a tomb, now held the faint scent of hope. The unopened box sat on the table, a challenge to face the past. But before I could delve into its depths, a knock on the door shattered the silence. It was her, the slut. Her face pale, eyes wide with fear. Her lover, Billy, had been arrested, a drunken brawl gone wrong. Her world, built on lies and betrayal, had crumbled. I looked at her, not with anger, but with a strange sense of detachment. This woman, who had caused me so much pain, was now adrift, lost in the wreckage of her own choices. The porch swing creaked in the twilight, a rusty lullaby welcoming me back to a reality I barely recognized. The scent of honeysuckle, once a beacon of home, now cloaked the house in a shroud of betrayal. Her silhouette, backlit by the kitchen window, was a stark reminder of the life I'd left behind, a life built on sand, now crumbling beneath the tide of truth. I hadn't planned this confrontation. The road trip, a desperate attempt to outrun the past, had instead led me back to it, headlights blazing, ready to crash and burn. Anger, a simmering pot on the back burner of my soul, finally reached its boiling point. The knock on the door was loud, almost accusatory. It didn't take long for her to answer, her face a mask of surprise, quickly morphing into fear as she saw me. The silence between us was a chasm, wide and deep, filled with the ghosts of stolen moments and broken promises. "Billy isn't here," she blurted, her voice thin and shaky. I didn't respond. Words felt hollow, inadequate to convey the hurricane brewing within me. My gaze, sharp as a butcher's knife, scanned the living room, landing on a half-empty beer bottle and a crumpled pack of cigarettes on the coffee table, remnants of a shared betrayal. As if summoned by my unspoken accusation, the front door creaked open. Billy, his face pale and drawn, stumbled in, his bravado faltering under the weight of my stare. He met my gaze for a fleeting moment, the flicker of shame quickly replaced by a defiant glare. "Dell," he started, his voice rough. "We can explain." I didn't let him finish. The words wouldn't matter. They couldn't erase the years of friendship he'd thrown away, the trust I'd blindly offered, only to have it shattered like a cheap mirror. My fist collided with his jaw with the force of a runaway train. The sickening thud echoed in the silence, followed by his grunt of pain. He staggered back, clutching his jaw, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. But the anger was a double-edged sword, cutting at me as much as it did at him. It was a primal rage, fueled by years of suppressed hurt, but fleeting. The sight of Billy, crumpled on the floor, blood trickling down his chin, brought a wave of nausea. I wasn't going to become the monster they had turned me into. I wouldn't let their betrayal define my final chapter. "Get out!" I rasped, my voice thick with emotion. "Both of you, get out and never come back!" They left, their footsteps fading into the night. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the weight of my decision. The house felt empty, not just of their presence, but of the life we had built together, brick by broken brick. The unopened box of memories, sitting on the table like a ticking bomb, mocked me. But I wasn't ready to face the past, not yet. There was a new path before me, one paved with uncertainty, but also with the possibility of healing. The next morning, I packed the bare essentials. The house, once a haven, now felt like a tomb of shattered dreams. As I drove away, the rearview mirror showed it shrinking, becoming a monument to a life I was leaving behind. Dr. Dushan, my old family doctor, was my first stop. His office, with its familiar scent of antiseptic and worn leather, felt like a sanctuary. He listened patiently, his eyes filled with understanding as I poured out my story, the raw emotions scraping against my throat. "Dell," he said finally, his voice gentle yet firm, "anger is a natural response, but it won't heal you. You have to find a way to let go, for your own sake." His words resonated within me, echoing the truth I already knew. Anger was a bandage, hiding the wound, but not healing it. The road stretched before me, a blank canvas waiting to be painted. I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew one thing. I was finally free. Free from the shackles of the past, free from the bitterness of betrayal, free to choose my own path. The journey wouldn't be easy. There would be days when the pain would resurface, sharp and raw. But I had Dr. Dushan's words to guide me, a map to navigate the treacherous terrain of healing. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere along the way, I would find the strength to open the box of memories, not with fear, but with acceptance. Maybe, just maybe, the past wouldn't define me, but instead become a stepping stone. The insistent rapping on the door shattered the fragile peace I'd constructed after the storm. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, echoing the insistent knocks. I knew who it was and felt it in the pit of my stomach, a cold, metallic dread. Opening the door wasn't an option, not with the raw wounds of betrayal still bleeding, so I waited, the silence thick with anticipation. The rapping turned into a pounding, accompanied by a muffled shout that sent a shiver down my spine. "Dell, open up! It's the police!" The words hit me like a physical blow. Police? Had they already contacted them? Panic clawed at my throat, but I forced it down. I wouldn't let them see me like this, broken and vulnerable. Instead, I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and opened the door. Two figures stood on the porch, bathed in the stark light of the street lamp. One, a seasoned officer with weathered eyes and a firm jaw, introduced himself as Officer Miller. The other, younger and eager, remained silent, observing me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Mr. Farmer," Officer Miller said, his voice calm but firm. "We received a report of a domestic disturbance. Can you tell us what happened?" "Domestic disturbance?" I scoffed, the bitterness clinging to my tongue. "It's a bit more complicated than that, officer." Hesitantly, I explained everything. The betrayal, anger, confrontation, and raw emotions spilled out, painting a picture of a man pushed to the edge. I didn't shy away from the violence, my voice cracking as I confessed to the punch I'd thrown at Billy. As I spoke, Officer Miller listened intently, his gaze never leaving my face. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just absorbed my story with an unsettling calmness. When I finished, a long silence stretched between us. "Mr. Farmer," he finally said, his voice laced with empathy, "I understand your anger, but violence is never the answer. You're lucky you didn't seriously injure Mr. Johnson." The name stung, a fresh reminder of the betrayal. I swallowed hard, the anger simmering beneath the surface. "I know," I mumbled, my voice barely audible. "I regret it." "Regret is good," Officer Miller said, "but it's not enough. You need to take responsibility for your actions." He explained the potential consequences, charges, restraining orders, even jail time. The words hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the price I might pay for my moment of rage. But amidst the fear, a flicker of clarity emerged. Violence wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't bring back Smooshy, mend the shattered trust, or undo the damage. "What do I need to do?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Officer Miller outlined the options: anger management classes, community service, and even therapy. They spoke of healing, of rebuilding, of finding a way to move forward without resorting to violence. His words were a lifeline, a path out of the emotional abyss I had found myself in. I agreed to everything. The consequences were a bitter pill to swallow, but necessary nonetheless. The officers left their sirens echoing in the quiet night. I stood alone on the porch, the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future pressing down on me. But within the darkness, a small spark of hope flickered. I wouldn't let this break me. I would face the consequences, mend the bridges I had burned, and most importantly, learn to manage the anger that threatened to consume me. The road ahead was long and arduous, but for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel lost. I had a direction, a purpose, and a newfound clarity. The past will always be a part of me, a scar etched on my soul, but I wouldn't let it define me. I would start by opening the box of memories, not with fear, but with acceptance. Facing the past, however painful, was the first step towards healing. And healing, I realized, was the only way to truly move forward. Opening the door, I stepped back into the house. The air was thick with dust and forgotten dreams, but it was also my haven, a place where I could start rebuilding piece by broken piece. The box, silent and heavy, sat on the table. I approached it cautiously, my fingers trembling as they brushed against the worn cardboard. With a deep breath, I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled amongst faded photographs and yellowed letters, lay a worn leather collar, Smooshy's collar. A wave of grief washed over me, tears blurring my vision. The sun, a pale intruder, peeked through the dusty blinds, painting the room in sickly yellow stripes. I lay in bed, the sheets tangled around me like the remnants of a life unraveling. The events of the week replayed in my mind, a chaotic montage of betrayal, anger, and a desperate plea for peace. The doctor's words echoed in the hollow chambers of my heart. 3 months, maybe 6 if you're lucky. Lucky? I scoffed at the irony. Lucky to have a ticking bomb planted inside me, each tick a reminder of the time I had left. But amidst the despair, a flicker of defiance ignited. I wouldn't spend my remaining days shrouded in grief. I wouldn't let the darkness consume me. I would live, truly live, until the very end. The morning was a whirlwind of activity. I packed a bag, not with clothes and toiletries, but with experiences. A worn copy of Kerouac's On the Road, a dusty record player, a map with destinations circled in red remnants of dreams I had shelved for later. Later, I realized, was a luxury I no longer had. First stop, the tattoo parlor. Under the steady hum of the needle, I etched a defiant message onto my arm, Memento Mori, a reminder of my mortality, but also a celebration of life. The pain was a baptism, a cleansing fire burning away the fear and regret. Next, the music store. I bought every vinyl record I ever coveted, from the soulful croons of Otis Redding to the rebellious anthems of The Clash. The air vibrated with music as I drove, each song a soundtrack to my personal revolution. The afternoon was spent indulging in forgotten pleasures. A double scoop of chocolate ice cream, the kind I used to sneak as a kid, melting down my fingers. A raucous game of pinball at the old arcade, the flashing lights and electronic buzzes a nostalgic embrace. Each indulgence was a rebellion against the approaching darkness, a defiant celebration of the life I still had. As the sun dipped towards the horizon, I found myself at the beach, the salty breeze whipping my hair. I sat on the sand, watching the waves crash against the shore, each retreat leaving a glistening trail of foam. The vastness of the ocean mirrored the vastness of the unknown I was facing. Fear, yes, there was fear, but also a strange sense of peace. I had faced my demons, embraced my reality, and chosen to live, not just exist, until the very end. The stars emerged, pinpricks of light against the velvet sky. I pulled out the record player, the worn wood a familiar comfort. The first notes of Born to Be Wild filled the air, a defiant anthem for my unconventional journey. The night was a blur of laughter, tears, and music. I sang along with Springsteen, danced like a fool under the stars, and shared stories with strangers who became companions for the night. Each moment was a precious gem, a memory I would hold close in the days to come. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, I packed up my belongings, the weight of experiences heavier than the weight of my bag. I drove back, the rising sun mirroring the newfound clarity within me. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing: I wouldn't go down without a fight. I would navigate the complexities of my plan, face the consequences with courage, and make peace with the decisions I had made. The ending, whenever it came, wouldn't be a tragedy. It would be the culmination of a life lived to the fullest, a testament to the human spirit's resilience in the face of adversity. And that, I knew, was a story worth telling. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. I reconnected with old friends, apologized to those I had wronged, and made amends with the past. I even contacted Billy, not with anger, but with a quiet understanding. The betrayal still stung, but forgiveness, I realized, was not for him, but for myself. The day the plan came to fruition, I was strangely calm. There was no fear, only a quiet acceptance. I said my goodbyes, the words heavy with emotion, yet laced with a bittersweet smile. As I closed my eyes, the memories danced before me. The salty taste of the ocean, the laughter of strangers, the defiant roar of music. They were the tapestry of my life, a testament to the choices I had made and the experiences I had embraced. And as the darkness finally enveloped me, I knew that even in the ending, there was a kind of beauty. The beauty of a life lived on my own terms, a story written in defiance of the inevitable. It was my story and no one else's.
If you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.